This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Gemma Blythe. The Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. Translated by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Paradiso, Canto 17 to 21. Paradiso, Canto 17. As came to Clymene, to be made certain of that which he had heard against himself, he who makes fathers chary still to children. Even such was I, and such was I perceived by Beatrice, and by the holy light, that first on my account had changed its place. Therefore my lady said to me, Send forth the flame of thy desire, so that it issue imprinted well with the internal stamp. Not that our knowledge may be greater made by speech of thine, but to accustom thee to tell thy thirst, that we may give thee drink. O my beloved tree, that so doth lift thee, that even as minds terrestrial perceive, no triangle containeth too obtuse. So thou beholdest the contingent things, ere in themselves they are, fixing thine eyes upon the point in which all times are present. While I was with Virgilus conjoined upon the mountain that the souls doth heal, and when descending into the dead world was spoken to me of my future life some grievous words, although I feel myself in sooth foursquare against the blows of chance. On this account my wish would be content to hear what fortune is approaching me, because foreseen an arrow comes more slowly. Thus did I say unto that selfsame light, that unto me had spoken before, and even as Beatrice willed, was my own will confessed, not in vague phrase, in which the foolish folk ensnared themselves of old, ere yet was slain the Lamb of God, who taketh sins away, but with clear words and unambiguous language responded that paternal love, hidden revealed by its own proper smile. Contingency, that outside of the volume of your materiality extends not, is all depicted in the eternal aspect. Necessity, however, thence it takes not, except as from the eye in which 'tis mirrored, a ship that with the current down descends. From thence, e'en as there cometh to the ear sweet harmony from an organ, comes in sight to me the time that is preparing for thee. As forth from Athens went Hippolytus, by reason of his stepdame false and cruel, so thou from Florence must perforce depart. Already this is willed, and this is sought for, and soon it shall be done by him who thinks it, where every day the Christ is bought and sold. The blame shall follow the offended party in outcry as is usual, but the vengeance shall witness to the truth that doth dispense it. Thou shalt abandon everything beloved most tenderly, and this the arrow is which first the bow of banishment shoots forth. Thou shalt have proof how savoureth of salt the bread of others, and how hard a road the going down and up another's stairs. And that which most shall weigh upon thy shoulders will be the bad and foolish company with which into this valley thou shalt fall. For all ingrate, all mad and impious will they become against thee, but soon after they, and not thou, shall have the forehead scarlet. Of their bestiality their own proceedings shall furnish proof, so 'twill be well for thee a party to have made thee by thyself. Thine earliest refuge and thine earliest inn shall be the mighty Lombard's courtesy, who on the ladder bears the holy bird, who such benign regard shall have for thee that twixt you twain in doing and in asking, that shall be first which is with others last. With him shalt thou see one who at his birth has by this star of strength been so impressed that notable shall his achievements be. Not yet the people are aware of him through his young age, since only 9 years yet around about him have these wheels revolved. But ere the Gascon cheat the noble Henry, some sparkles of his virtue shall appear in caring not for silver nor for toil. So recognized shall his magnificence become hereafter, that his enemies will not have power to keep mute tongues about it. On him rely, and on his benefits. By him shall many people be transformed, changing condition rich and mendicant, and written in thy mind thou hence shalt bear of him, but shalt not say it. And things said he incredible to those who shall be present. Then added, Son, these are the commentaries on which was said to thee, Behold the snares that are concealed behind few revolutions. Yet should I not thy neighbours thou shouldst envy, because thy life into the future reaches beyond the punishment of their perfidies. When by silence showed that sainted soul that it had finished putting in the woof into that web which I had given it warped, began I, even as he who yearneth after, being in doubt, some counsel from a person who seeth and uprightly wills and loves. Well see I, Father mine, how spurreth on the time towards me such a blow to deal me, as heaviest is to him who most gives way. Therefore with foresight it is well I arm me, that if the dearest place be taken from me, I may not lose the others by my songs. Down through the world of infinite bitterness, and o'er the mountains from which beauteous summit the eyes of my own lady lifted me, and afterward through heaven from light to light, I have learned that which, if I tell again, will be a saviour of strong herbs to many. And if I am a timid friend to truth, I fear lest I may lose my life with those who will hereafter call this time the olden. The light in which was smiling my own treasure, which there I had discovered, flashed at first as in the sunshine doth a golden mirror, then made reply, a conscience overcast or with its own or with another's shame will taste forsooth the tautness of thy word, but ne'ertheless, all falsehood laid aside, make manifest thy vision utterly, and let them scratch wherever is the itch. For if thine utterance shall offensive be at the first taste, a vital nutriment 'twill leave thereafter when it is digested. This cry of thine shall do as doth the wind, which smiteth most the most exalted summits, and that is no slight argument of honour. Therefore are shown to thee within these wheels, upon the mount and in the dolorous valley, only the souls that unto fame are known, because the spirit of the hearer rests not, nor doth confirm its faith by an example, which has the root of it unknown and hidden, or other reason that is not apparent. Paradiso, Canto 18. Now was alone rejoicing in its word, that soul beatified, and I was tasting my own the bitter tempering with the sweet, and the lady who to God was leading me said, Change thy thought, consider that I am near unto him who every wrong disburdens. Unto the loving accents of my comfort I turned me round, and then what love I saw within those holy eyes I here relinquish. Not only that my language I distrust, but that my mind cannot return so far above itself unless another guide it. Thus much upon that point can I repeat, that her again beholding, my affection from every other longing was released, while the eternal pleasure which direct rayed upon Beatrice from her fair face contented me with its reflected aspect. Conquering me with the radiance of a smile, she said to me, Turn thee about and listen. Not in my eyes alone is paradise, even as sometimes here do we behold the affection in the look, if it be such that all the soul is rapt away by it. So by the flaming of the effulgence holy to which I turned, I recognized therein the wish of speaking to me somewhat farther, and it began, In this fifth resting place, upon the tree that liveth by its summit, and bears fruit and never loses leaf, are blessed spirits that below, ere yet they came to heaven, were of such renown that every muse therewith would affluent be. Therefore look thou upon the cross's horns. He whom I now shall name will there enact what doth within a cloud its own swift fire. I saw athwart the cross, a splendid drawn by naming Joshua even as he did it, nor noted I the word before the deed. And at the name of the great Maccabee I saw another move itself revolving, and gladness was the whip unto that top. Likewise for Charlemagne and for Orlando, two of them my regard attentive followed, as followeth the eye its falcon flying. William thereafterward, and Renaud, and the Duke Godfrey did attract my sight upon that cross, and Robert Guiscard. Then, moved and mingled with the other lights, the soul that had addressed me showed how great an artist was among the heavenly singers. To my right side I turned myself around, my duty to behold in Beatrice, either by words or gesture signified, and so translucent I beheld her eyes, so full of pleasure, that her countenance surpassed its other and its latest wont. And as, by feeling greater delectation, a man in doing good from day to day becomes aware his virtue is increasing, so I became aware that my gyration with heaven together had increased its arc, that miracle beholding more adorned. And such as is the change, in little lapse of time, in a pale woman, when her face is from the load of bashfulness unladen, such was it in mine eyes when I had turned, caused by the whiteness of the temperate star, the sixth which to itself had gathered me. Within that jovial torch did I behold the sparkling of the love which was therein delineate, our language to mine eyes. And even as birds uprisen from the shore, as in congratulation o'er their food, make squadrons of themselves, now round, now long, so from within those lights the holy creatures sang flying to and fro, and in their figures made of themselves, now D, now I, now L. First singing they came, to their own music moved, then one becoming of these characters, a little while they rested and were silent. O divine Pegasee, thou who genius doth glorious make and render it long-lived, and this through thee the cities and the kingdoms, illume me with thyself, that I may bring their figures out as I have them conceived, apparent by thy power in these brief verses. Themselves then they displayed in 5 times 7 vowels and consonants, and I observed the parts as they seemed spoken unto me. Diligat justium. These were first verb and noun of all that was depicted. Qui judicus teram were the last. Thereafter in the M of the 5th word remained they so arranged that Jupiter seemed to be silver there with gold inlaid. And other lights I saw descend where was the summit of the M, and pause there singing the good, I think, that draws themselves to itself. Then, as in striking upon burning logs, upward there fly innumerable sparks, whence fools are wont to look for auguries. More than 1,000 lights seem thence to rise, and to ascend, some more, and others less, even as the sun that lights them had allotted. And each one being quiet in its place, the head and neck beheld I of an eagle, delineated by that inlaid fire. He who there paints has none to be his guide, but himself guides, and is from him remembered that virtue which is form unto the nest. The other beatitude, that contented seemed at first to bloom a lily on the M, by a slight motion followed out the imprint. O gentle star, what and how many gems did demonstrate to me that all our justice effect is of that heaven which thou ingemnest. Wherefore I pray the mind, in which begin thy motion and thy virtue, to regard whence comes the smoke that vitiates thy rays, so that a second time is now be wroth with buying and with selling in the temple, whose walls were built with signs and martyrdoms. O soldiery of heaven whom I contemplate, implore for those who are upon the earth, all gone astray after the bad example. Once 'twas the custom to make war with swords, but now 'tis made by taking here and there the bread the pitying Father shuts from none. Yet thou, who writest but to cancel, think that Peter and that Paul, who for this vineyard which thou art spoiling died, are still alive. Well canst thou say, so steadfast my desire is unto him who will to live alone, and for a dance was led to martyrdom, that I know not the fisherman nor Paul. Paradiso, Canto 19. Appeared before me with its wings outspread, the beautiful image that in sweet fruition made jubilant the interwoven souls. Appeared a little ruby each, wherein ray of the sun was burning so enkindled that each into mine eyes refracted it. And what it now behooves me to retrace, nor voice has e'er reported, nor ink written, nor was by fantasy e'er comprehended. For speak I saw, and likewise heard, the beak, and utter with its voice both I and my, when in conception it was we and our, and it began, being just and merciful, am I exalted here unto that glory which cannot be exceeded by desire. And upon earth I left my memory, such that the evil-minded people there commend it, but continue not the story. So doth a single heat from many embers make itself felt, even as from many loves issued a single sound from out that image. Whence I thereafter, O perpetual flowers of the eternal joy, that only one make me perceive your odors manifold, exhaling, break within me the great fast, which a long season has in hunger held me, not finding for it any food on earth. Well do I know that if in heaven its mirror justice divine another realm doth make, yours apprehends it not through any veil. You know how I attentively address me to listen, and you know what is the doubt that is in me so very old a fast, even as a falcon issuing from his hood doth move his head and with his wings applaud him, showing desire and making himself fine. Saw I become that standard which of lauds was interwoven of the grace divine with such songs as he knows who there rejoices. Then it began. He who a compass turned on the world's outer verge, and who within it devised so much occult and manifest, could not the impress of his power so make on all the universe, as that his word should not remain in infinite excess. And this makes certain that the first proud being, who was the paragon of every creature, by not awaiting light, fell immature, and hence appears it that each minor nature is scant receptacle unto that good which has no end and by itself is measured. In consequence our vision, which perforce must be some ray of that intelligence with which all things whatever are replete, cannot in its own nature be so potent that it shall not its origin discern far beyond that which is apparent to it. Therefore into the justice sempiternal the power of vision that your world receives, as I into the ocean penetrates, which though it see the bottom near the shore, upon the deep perceives it not, and yet 'tis there, but it is hidden by the depth. There is no light but comes from the serene that never is o'ercast, nay, it is darkness or shadow of the flesh, or else its poison. Amply to thee is opened now the cavern which has concealed from thee the living justice of which thou madst such frequent questioning. For saidst thou, born a man is on the shore of Indus, and is none who there can speak of Christ, nor who can read, nor who can write. And all his inclinations and his actions are good, so far as human reason sees, without a sin in life or in discourse. He dieth unbaptized and without faith. Where is this justice that condemneth him? Where is his fault, if he do not believe? Now who art thou that on the bench would sit in judgment at 1,000 miles away, with the short vision of a single span? Truly to him who with me subtilizes, if so the scripture were not over you, for doubting there were marvelous occasion. O animals terrene, O stolid minds, the primal will, that in itself is good, ne'er from itself the good supreme has moved. So much is just as in accordant with it, no good created draws it to itself, but it by raying forth occasions that. Even as above her nest goes circling round the stork, when she has fed her little ones, and he who has been fed looks up at her, so lifted I my brows, and even such became the blessed image, which its wings were moving, by so many counsels urged, circling around it sang, and said, as are my notes to thee, who dost not comprehend them, such is the eternal judgment to you mortals. Those lucent splendors of the Holy Spirit grew quiet then, but still within the standard that made the Romans reverend to the world. It recommenced. Unto this kingdom never ascended one who had not faith in Christ, before or since he to the tree was nailed. But look thou, many crying are, Christ, Christ, who at the judgment shall be far less near to him than some shall be who knew not Christ. Such Christians shall the Ethiop condemn, when the two companies shall be divided, the one forever rich, the other poor. What to your kings may not the Persians say, when they that volume opened shall behold, in which are written down all their dispraises? There shall be seen among the deeds of Albert that which ere long shall set the pen in motion, for which the realm of Prague shall be deserted. There shall be seen the woe that on the Seine he brings by falsifying of the coin, who by the blow of a wild boar shall die. There shall be seen the pride that causes thirst, which makes the Scot and Englishman so mad that they within their boundaries cannot rest. Be seen the luxury and effeminate life of him of Spain and the Bohemian, who valor never knew and never wished. Be seen the cripple of Jerusalem, his goodness represented by an I, while the reverse an M shall represent. Be seen the avarice and poltroonery of him who guards the island of the fire, wherein Anchises finished his long life, and to declare how pitiful he is shall be his record in contracted letters, which shall make note of much in little space, and shall appear to each one the foul deeds of uncle and of brother, who in nations so famous have dishonored, and 2 crowns. And he of Portugal and he of Norway shall there be known, and he of Rosca too, who saw in evil hour the coin of Venice. O happy Hungary, if she let herself be wronged no farther! And Navarre, the happy, if with the hills that gird her she be armed, and each one may believe that now, as Hansel thereof, do Nicosia and Famagosta lament and rage because of their own beast, who from the other's flank departeth not. When he who all the world illuminates out of our hemisphere so far descends that on all sides the daylight is consumed, the heaven that erst by him alone was kindled doth suddenly reveal itself again by many lights, wherein in one resplendent. And came into my mind this act of heaven, when the ensign of the world and of its leaders had silent in the blessed beak become, because those living luminaries all, so far more luminous, did songs begin lapsing and falling from my memory. O gentle love, that with a smile dost cloak thee, how ardent in those sparks didst thou appear, that had the breath alone of holy thoughts! After the precious and pellucid crystals with which begemmed the sixth light, I beheld silence imposed on the angelic bells. I seemed to hear the murmuring of a river that clear descendeth down from rock to rock, showing the affluence of its mountain top, and as the sound upon the cithern's neck, taken its form, and as upon the vent of rustic pipe the wind that enters it. Even thus, relieved from the delay of waiting, that murmuring of the eagle mounted up along its neck, as if it had been hollow. There it became a voice, and issued thence from out its beak, in such a form of words as the heart waited for wherein I wrote them. The part in me which sees and bears the sun in mortal eagles, it began to me, now fixedly must needs be looked upon. For of the fires of which I make my figure, those whence the eye doth sparkle in my head, of all their orders the supremest are. He who is shining in the midst as pupil was once the singer of the Holy Spirit, who bore the ark from city unto city. Now knoweth he the merit of his song, in so far as effect of his own counsel, by the reward which is commensurate. Of five that make a circle for my brow, he that approacheth nearest to my beak did the poor widow for her son console. Now knoweth he how dearly it doth cost, not following Christ, by the experience of this sweet life and of its opposite. He who comes next in the circumference of which I speak, upon its highest arc, did death postpone by penitence sincere. Now knoweth he that the eternal judgment suffers no change, albeit worthy prayer maketh below tomorrow of today. The next who follows with the laws and me, under the good intent that bore bad fruit, became a Greek by ceding to the pastor. Now knoweth he how all the ill deduced from his good action is not harmful to him, although the world thereby may be destroyed, and he, whom in the downward arc thou seest, Guglielmo was, whom the old same land deplores, that weepeth Charles and Frederick yet alive. Now knoweth he how heaven enamored is with a just king, and in the outward show of his effulgence he reveals it still. Who would believe down in the errant world that ere the Trojan Rufus in this round could be the fifth one of the holy lights? Now knoweth he enough of what the world has not the power to see of grace divine, although his sight may not discern the bottom, like as a lark that in the air expatiates, first singing and then silent with content of the last sweetness that doth satisfy her. Such seemed to me the image of the imprint of the eternal pleasure, by whose will doth everything become the thing it is. And notwithstanding, to my doubt, I was as glass is to the colour that invests it, to wait the time in silence it endured not. But forth from my mouth, what things are these, extorted from the force of its own weight? Whereas I saw great joy of coruscation. Thereafterward, with eye still more enkindled, the blessed standard made to me reply, to keep me not in wonderment suspended. I see that thou believest in these things, because I say them, but thou seest not how, so that, although believed in, they are hidden. Thou doest as he doth, who a thing by name well apprehendeth, but its quiddity cannot perceive unless another show it. Regnum colorum suffereth violence, from fervent love and from that living hope that overcometh the divine volition. Not in the guise that man overcometh man, but conquers it because it will be conquered, and conquered conquers by benignity. The first life of the eyebrow and the fifth caused thee astonishment, because with them thou seest the region of the angels painted. They passed not from their bodies, as thou thinkest, Gentiles, but Christians in the steadfast faith of feet that were to suffer, and had suffered. For one from hell, where no one e'er turns back unto good will, returned upon his bones, and that of living hope was the reward. Of living hope that placed its efficacy in prayers to God, made to resuscitate him, so that 'twere possible to move his will. The glorious soul concerning which I speak, returning to the flesh, where brief its stay, believed in him who had the power to aid it, and in believing kindled to such fire of genuine love, that at the second death worthy it was to come unto this joy. The other one through grace, that from so deep a fountain wells, that never hath the eye of any creature reached its primal wave, set all his love below on righteousness. Wherefore from grace to grace did God unclose his eye to our redemption yet to be, whence he believed therein, and suffered not from that day forth the stench of paganism. And he reproved therefore the folk perverse, those maidens three, whom at the right hand wheel thou didst behold, were unto him for baptism more than 1,000 years before baptizing. O thou predestination, how remote thy root is from the aspect of all those who the first cause did not behold entire! And you, O mortals, hold yourselves restrained in judging. For ourselves who look on God, we do not know as yet all the elect, and sweet to us is such deprivation, because our good in this good is made perfect, that whatsoever God wills, we also will. After this manner, by that shape divine, to make clear in me my short-sightedness, was given to me a pleasant medicine. And as a good singer, a good lutanist accompanies with vibrations of the chords, whereby more pleasantness the song acquires, so while it spake, do I remember me that I beheld both of those blessed lights, even as the winking of the eyes concords, moving unto the words their little flames. Paradiso, Canto 21. Already on my lady's face mine eyes again were fastened, and with these my mind, and from all other purpose, was withdrawn, and she smiled not. But if I were to smile, she unto me began, thou wouldst become like Semele, where she was turned to ashes, because my beauty that along the stairs of the eternal palace more enkindles, as thou hast seen, the farther we ascend, if it were tempered not, is so resplendent, that all thy mortal power in its effulgence would seem a leaflet, like the thunder crushes. We are uplifted to the seventh splendor, that underneath the burning lion's breast now radiates downward, mingled with his power. Fix in direction of thine eyes the mind, and make of them a mirror for the figure that in this mirror shall appear to thee. He who could know what were the pastorage my sight had in that blessed countenance, when I transferred me to another care, would recognize how grateful was to me obedience unto my celestial escort, by counterposing one side with the other, within the crystal which, around the world revolving, bears the name of its dear leader, under whom every wickedness lay dead. Colored like gold on which the sunshine gleams, a stairway I beheld, to such a height uplifted, that mine eyes pursued it not. Likewise beheld I down the steps descending so many splendors, that I thought each light that in the heaven appears was there diffused, and as accordant with their natural custom, the rooks together at the break of day bestir themselves to warm their feathers cold. Then some of them fly off without return, others come back to where they started from, and others, wheeling round, still keep at home. Such fashion it appeared to me was there within the sparkling that together came, as soon as on a certain step it struck, and that which nearest unto us remained, became so clear, that in my thought I said, will I perceive the love thou showest me? But she, from whom I wait the how and when of speech and silence, standeth still, whence I against desire do well if I ask not. She thereupon, who saw my silentness, in the sight of him who seeth everything, said unto me, let loose thy warm desire. And I began. No merit of my own renders me worthy of response from thee, and for her sake who granteth me the asking. Thou blessed life, that doth remain concealed in thy beatitude, make known to me the cause which draweth thee so near my side, and tell me why is silent in this wheel the dulcet symphony of paradise, that through the rest below sounds so devotedly. Thou hast thy hearing, mortal, as thy sight. If answer made to me, they sing not here for the same cause that Beatrice has not smiled. Thus far adown the holy stairway's steps have I descended, but to give thee welcome with words, and with the light that mantles me. Nor did more love cause me to be more ready, for love is much and more up there is burning, as doth the flaming manifest to thee. But the high charity that makes us servants prompts to the counsel which controls the world, allotteth here, even as thou doth observe. I see full well, said I, O sacred lamp, how love unfettered in this court sufficeth to follow the eternal providence. But this is what seems odd for me to see. Wherefore, predestinate, wast thou alone unto this office from among thy consorts? No sooner had I come to the last word, than of its middle made a light of centre, whirling itself about like a swift millstone. When answer made the love that was therein on me directed is the light divine, piercing through this in which I am embosomed, of which the virtue with my sight conjoined lifts me above myself so far I see the supreme essence from which this is drawn. Hence comes the joyfulness with which I flame, for to my sight, as far as it is clear, the clearness of the flame I equal make. But that soul in the heaven which is most pure, that seraph which his eye on God most fixes, could this demand of thine not satisfy, because so deeply sinks in the abyss of the eternal statute what thou asketh. From all created sight it is cut off, and to the mortal world, when thou returnest, this carry back, that it may not presume longer toward such a goal to move its feet. The mind that shineth here on earth doth smoke. From this observe, how can it do below that which it cannot through the heaven assume it? Such limit did its words prescribe to me. The question I relinquished, and restricted myself to ask it humbly who it was. Between two shores of Italy rise cliffs, but not far distant from thy native place. So high the thunders far below them sound, and form a ridge that Catria is called, neath which is consecrate a hermitage, wont to be dedicate to worship only. Thus unto me the third speech commenced, and then continuing it said, Thereon unto God's service I become so steadfast, that feeding only on the juice of olives, lightly I passed away the heats and frosts, contented in my thoughts contemplative. That cloister used to render to these heavens abundantly, and now is empty grown, so that perforce its seam must be revealed. I in that place was Peter Damiano, and Peter the sinner was I in the house of Our Lady on the Adriatic shore. Little of mortal life remained to me, when I was called and dragged forth to the hat, which shifteth evermore from bad to worse. Came Cephas, and the mighty vessel came of the Holy Spirit, meagre and barefooted, taking the food of any hostelry. Now some one to support them on each side, the modern shepherds need, and some to lead them, so heavy are they, and to hold their trains. They cover up their palfreys with their cloaks, so that two beasts go underneath one skin. O patience that doth tolerate so much! At this voice saw I many little flames from step to step, descending and revolving, and every revolution made them fairer. Round about this one came they and stood still, and a cry uttered of so loud a sound it here could find no parallel, nor I distinguished it. The thunder so overcame me. End of Paradiso, Canto 17 to 21. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. That's LibriVox.org. Recording by Christy Nowak. The Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Paradiso, Canto 22 to 27. Paradiso, Canto 22. Oppressed with stupor, I unto my guide turned, like a little child who always runs for refuge there where he confideth most. And she, even as a mother who straightway gives comfort to her pale and breathless boy with voice whose wont it is to reassure him, said to me, Knowest thou not thou art in heaven? And knowest thou not that heaven is holy all, and what is done here cometh from good zeal? After what wise the singing would have changed thee, and I by smiling, thou canst now imagine, since that the cry has startled thee so much, in which, if thou hadst understood its prayers, already would be known to thee the vengeance which thou shalt look upon before thou diest. The sword above here smiteth not in haste, nor tardily, howe'er it seem to him who fearing or desiring waits for it. But turn thee round towards the others now, for very illustrious spirits shalt thou see if thou thy sight directest as I say. As it seemed good to her, mine eyes I turned, and saw 100 spherules that together with mutual rays each other more embellished. I stood as one who in himself represses the point of his desire, and ventures not to question, he so feareth the too much. And now the largest and most luculent among those pearls came forward, that it might make my desire concerning it content. Within it then I heard, If thou couldst see, even as myself, the charity that burns among us, thy conceits would be expressed, but that by waiting thou mayst not come late to the high end, I will make answer even unto the thought of which thou art so chary. That mountain on whose slope Cassino stands was frequented of old upon its summit by a deluded folk and ill-disposed. And I am he who first up thither bore the name of him who brought us upon the earth, the truth that so much sublimateth us. And such abundant grace upon me shone that all the neighboring towns I drew away from the impious worship that seduced the world. These other fires, each one of them were men contemplative, enkindling by that heat which maketh holy flowers and fruits spring up. Here is Macarius, here is Romualdus, here are my brethren who within the cloisters their footsteps stayed and kept a steadfast heart. And I to him, The affection which thou showest speaking with me, and the good countenance which I behold and note in all your ardors, in me have so my confidence dilated as the sun doth the rose when it becomes as far unfolded as it hath the power. Therefore I pray, and thou assure me, Father, if I may so much grace receive that I may thee behold with countenance unveiled. He thereupon, Brother, thy high desire in the remotest fear shall be fulfilled, where are fulfilled all others, and my own. There perfect is, and ripened, and complete every desire. Within that one alone is every part where it has always been, for it is not in space, nor turns on poles, and unto it our stairway reaches up, whence thus from out thy sight it steals away. Up to that height the patriarch Jacob saw it, extending its supernal part, what time so thronged with angels it appeared to him. But to ascend it now, no one uplifts his feet from off the earth, and now my rule below remaineth for mere waste of paper. The walls that used of old to be an abbey are changed to dens of robbers, and the cowls are sacks filled full of miserable flour. But heavy usury is not taken up so much against God's pleasure as that fruit which maketh so insane the heart of monks. For whatsoever hath the church in keeping is for the folk that ask it in God's name, not for one's kindred or for something worse. The flesh of mortals is so very soft that good beginnings down below suffice not from springing of the oak to bearing acorns. Peter began with neither gold nor silver, and I with orison and abstinence, and Francis with humility his convent. If thou lookest at each one's beginning, and then regardest whither he has run, thou shalt behold the white changed into brown. In verity the Jordan backward turned, and the sea fleeing when God willed were more a wonder to behold than succour here. Thus unto me he said, and then withdrew to his own band, and the band closed together. Then, like a whirlwind, all was upward rapt. The gentle lady urged me on behind them up o'er that stairway by a single sign, so did her virtue overcome my nature. Nor here below, where one goes up and down by natural law, was motion e'er so swift that it could be compared unto my wing. Reader, as I may unto that devout triumph return, on whose account I often for my transgressions weep and beat my breast, thou hadst not thrust thy finger in the fire and drawn it out again before I saw the sign that follows Taurus, and was in it. O glorious stars, O light impregnated with mighty virtue, from which I acknowledge all my genius, whatsoe'er it may be. With you was born, and hid himself with you, he who is father of all mortal life, when first I tasted of the Tuscan air. And then, when grace was freely given to me to enter the high wheel which turns around you, your region was allotted unto me. To you, devoutly, at this hour, my soul is sighing, that it virtue may acquire for the stern pass that draws it to itself. Thou art so near unto the last salvation, thus Beatrice began, thou oughtest now to have thine eyes unclouded and acute. And therefore, ere thou enter farther in, look down once more, and see how vast a world thou hast already put beneath thy feet, so that thy heart, as jocund as it may, present itself to the triumphant throng that comes rejoicing through this rounded ether. I with my sight returned through one and all the sevenfold spheres, and I beheld this globe such that I smiled at its ignoble semblance, and that opinion I approve as best which doth account it least, and he who thinks of something else may truly be called just. I saw the daughter of Latona shining without that shadow which to me was cause that once I had believed her rare and dense. The aspect of thy son Hyperion here I sustained, and saw how moved themselves around and near him Maia and Dione. Thence there appeared the temperateness of Jove, twixt son and father, and to me was clear the change that of their whereabout they make. And all the seven made manifest to me how great they are, and eke how swift they are, and how they are in distant habitations. The threshing floor that maketh us so proud, to me revolving with the eternal twins, was all apparent made from hill to harbor. Then to the beauteous eyes mine eyes I turned. End of Canto 22. Canto 23. Even as a bird, mid the beloved leaves, quiet upon the nest of her sweet brood throughout the night, that hideth all things from us, who, that she may behold their longed-for looks, and find the food wherewith to nourish them, in which, to her, grave labours grateful are, anticipates the time on open spray, and with an ardent longing waits the sun, gazing intent as soon as breaks the dawn. Even thus my lady standing was, erect and vigilant, turned round towards the zone underneath which the sun displays less haste. So that, beholding her, distraught and wistful, such I became as he is, who, desiring for something, yearns, and hoping is appeased. But brief the space from one when to the other of my awaiting, say I, and the seeing, the welkin grow resplendent more and more. And Beatrice exclaimed, Behold the hosts of Christ's triumphal march, and all the fruit harvested by the rolling of these spheres. It seemed to me her face was all aflame, and eyes she had so full of ecstasy that I must needs pass on without describing. As when in nights serene of the full moon smiles Trivia among the nymphs eternal, who paint the firmament through all its gulfs, saw I, above the myriads of lamps, a sun, that one and all of them enkindled, e'en as our own doth the supernal sights. And through the living light transparent shone the lucent substance so intensely clear into my sight that I sustained it not. O Beatrice, thou gentle guide and dear, to me she said, what overmasters thee a virtue is, from which naught shields itself. There are the wisdom and the omnipotence that oped the thoroughfares twixt heaven and earth, for which there erst had been so long a yearning. As fire from out a cloud unlocks itself, dilating so it finds not room therein, and down against its nature falls to earth, so did my mind among those elements become larger, issue from itself, and that which it became cannot remember. Open thine eyes and look at what I am. Thou hast beheld such things that strong enough hast thou become to tolerate my smile. I was as one who still retains the feeling of a forgotten vision and endeavors in vain to bring it back into his mind when I this invitation heard, deserving of so much gratitude it never fades out of the book that chronicles the past. If at this moment sounded all the tongues that Polyhymnia and her sisters made most lubrical with their delicious milk, to aid me, to 1,000th of the truth it would not reach, singing the holy smile and how the holy aspect it illumed. And therefore, representing paradise, the sacred poem must perforce leap over, even as a man who finds his way cut off. But whoso thinketh of the ponderous theme, and of the mortal shoulder laden with it, should blame it not, if under this it tremble. It is no passage for a little boat, this which goes cleaving the audacious prow, nor for a pilot who would spare himself. Why doth my face so much enamour thee, that to the garden fair thou turnest not, which under the rays of Christ is blossoming? There is the rose in which the Word divine became incarnate. There the lilies are, by whose perfume the good way was discovered. Thus Beatrice. And I, who to her counsels was wholly read, once again betook me unto the battle of the feeble brows. As in the sunshine, that unsullied streams through fractured cloud, ere now a meadow of flowers mine eyes with shadow covered o'er have seen, so troops of splendors manifold I saw, illumed from above with burning rays, beholding not the source of the effulgence. O power benignant that dost so imprint them, thou didst exalt thyself to give more scope there to mine eyes that were not strong enough. The name of that fair flower I e'er invoke morning and evening, utterly enthralled my soul to gaze upon the greater fire. And when in both mine eyes depicted were the glory and greatness of the living star which there excelleth, as it here excelled, athwart the heavens a little torch descended, formed in a circle like a coronal, and cinctured it, and whirled itself about it. Whatever melody most sweet soundeth on earth, and to itself most draws the soul, would seem a cloud that, rent asunder, thunders. Compared unto the sounding of that lyre wherewith was crowned the sapphire beautiful, which gives the clearest heaven its sapphire hue. I am angelic, love, that circle round the joy sublime which breathes from out the womb that was the hostelry of our desire, and I shall circle, Lady of Heaven, while thou followest thy Son, and makest diviner the sphere supreme, because thou enterest there. Thus did the circulated melody seal itself up, and all the other lights were making to resound the name of Mary. The regal mantle of the volumes, all of that world which most fervid is, and living with breath of God, and with his works and ways, extended over us its inner border, so very distant, that the semblance of it there, where I was not yet, appeared to me. Therefore mine eyes did not possess the power of following the incoronated flame, which mounted upward near to its own seed. And as a little child that toward its mother stretches its arms when it the milk has taken, through impulse kindled into outward flame, each of those gleams of whiteness upward reached so with its summit that the deep affection they had for Mary was revealed to me. Thereafter they remained there in my sight, Regina Coeli singing with such sweetness that ne'er from me has the delight departed. Oh, what exuberance is garnered up within those richest coffers which had been good husbandmen for sowing here below. There they enjoy and live upon the treasure which was acquired while weeping in the exile of Babylon wherein the gold was left. There triumpheth beneath the exalted Son of God and Mary, in his victory, both with the ancient council and the new, he who doth keep the keys of such a glory. End of Canto 23. Paradiso, Canto 24. O company elect to the great supper of the Lamb Benedight, who feedeth you so that forever full is your desire, if, by the grace of God, this man foretaste something of that which falleth from your table, or ever doth prescribe to him the time, direct your mind to his immense desire, and him somewhat be due. Ye drinking are for ever at the font whence comes his thought. Thus Beatrice. And Those souls beatified transform themselves to spheres on steadfast poles, flaming intensely in the guise of comets. And as the wheels in works of horologies revolve so that the first to the beholder motionless seems, and the last one to fly, so in like manner did those carols, dancing in different measure of their affluence, give me the gauge as they were swift or slow. From that one which I noted of most beauty beheld I issue forth a fire so happy that none it left there of a greater brightness. And around Beatrice 3 several times it whirled itself with so divine a song, my fantasy repeats it not to me. Therefore the pen skips, and I write it not, since our imagination for such folds, much more our speech, is of a tint too glaring. O holy sister mine, who is implorest with such devotion, by thine ardent love thou dost unbind me from that beautiful sphere. Thereafter, having stopped, the blessed fire unto my lady did direct its breath, which spake in fashion as I here have said. And she, O light eterna of the great man to whom our Lord delivered up the keys, he carried down of this miraculous joy, this one examine on points light and grave, as good beseemeth thee, about the faith by means of which thou on the sea didst walk. If he love well, and hope well, and believe, from thee 'tis hid not, for thou hast thy sight there where depicted everything is seen. But since this kingdom has made citizens by means of the true faith, to glorify it, 'tis well he have the chance to speak thereof. As baccalaureate arms himself, and speaks not until the master doth propose the question to argue it, and not to terminate it, so did I arm myself with every reason, while she was speaking, that I might be ready for such a questioner and such profession. Say, thou good Christian, manifest thyself. What is the faith? Whereat I raised my brow unto that light wherefrom was this breathed forth. Then turned I round to Beatrice, and she prompt signals made to me that I should pour the water forth from my internal fountain. May grace that suffers me to make confession, began I, to the great centurion my cause conceptions all to be explicit. And I continued, as the truthful pen, father, of thy dear brother wrote of it, who put with thee Rome into the good way, faith is the substance of the things we hope for, and evidence of those that are not seen, and this appears to me quiddity. Then heard I, very rightly thou perceivest, if well thou understandest why he placed it with substances and then with evidences. And I thereafterward, the things profound that here vouchsafe me their apparition unto all eyes below are so concealed, that they exist there only in belief, upon which is founded the high hope, and hence it takes the nature of a substance. And it behoveth us from this belief to reason without having other sight, and hence it has the nature of evidence. Then heard I, if whatever is acquired below by doctrine were thus understood, no sophist's subtlety would there find place. Thus was breathed forth from that enkindled love. Then added, very well has been gone over already of this coin, the alloy and weight, but tell me if thou hast it in thy purse. And I, yes, both so shining and so round that in its stamp there is no peradventure. Thereafter issued from the light profound that there resplendent was, this precious jewel, upon the which is every virtue founded, whence hast thou it? And I, the large outpouring of Holy Spirit which has been diffused upon the ancient parchments and the new, a syllogism is, which proved it to me with such acuteness that, compared therewith, all demonstration seems to me obtuse. And then I heard, the ancient and the new postulates that to thee are so conclusive, why dost thou take them for the word divine? And I, the proofs, which show the truth to me, are the works subsequent, whereunto nature ne'er heated iron yet, nor anvil beat. 'Twas answered me, say, who assureth thee that those works ever were? The thing itself that must be proved, naught else to thee affirms it. Were the world to Christianity converted, I said, withouten miracles this one is such, the rest are not its 100th part, because that poor and fasting thou didst enter into the field to sow there, the good plant which was a vine has become a thorn. This being finished, the high holy court resounded through the spheres, one God we praise, in melody that there above is chanted. And then that baron, who from branch to branch examining had thus conducted me till the extremest leaves we were approaching, again began. The grace that dallying plays with thine intellect, thy mouth has opened, up to this point, as it should opened be, so that I do approve what forth emerged. But now thou must express what thou believest, and whence to thy belief it was presented. O Holy Father, Spirit who beholdest what thou believedst, so that thou o'ercamest towards the sepulchre more youthful feet, began I, thou dost wish me in this place the form to manifest of my prompt belief, and likewise thou the cause thereof demandest. And I respond, in one God I believe, sole and eterne, who moveth all the heavens with love and with desire, himself unmoved. And of such faith not only have I proofs physical and metaphysical, but gives them likewise the truth that from this place rains down through Moses, through the prophets and the Psalms, through the Evangel, and through you, who wrote after the fiery Spirit sanctified you. In persons three eterne believe, and these one essence I believe, so one and trine, they bear conjunction both with sunt and est. With the profound condition and divine which now I touch upon doth stamp my mind ofttimes the doctrine evangelical. This the beginning is. This is the spark which afterwards dilates to vivid flame, and, like a star in heaven, is sparkling in me. Even as a lord who hears what pleaseth him, his servant straight embraces, congratulating for the good news as soon as he is silent, so, giving me its benediction, singing 3 times encircled me when I was silent, the apostolic light, at whose command I spoken had, in speaking I so pleased him. End of Canto 24. Canto 25. If e'er it happened that the poem sacred, to which both heaven and earth have set their hand, so that it many a year hath made me lean, o'ercome the cruelty that bars me out from the fair sheepfold, where a lamb I slumbered, an enemy to the wolves that war upon it, with other voice forthwith, with other fleece poet will I return, and at my font baptismal will I take the laurel crown, because into the faith that maketh known all souls to God there entered I, and then Peter, for her sake, thus my brow encircled. Thereafterward, towards us moved a light out of that band whence issued the first fruits which of his vicars Christ behind him left. And then my lady, full of ecstasy, said unto me, Look, look, behold the baron from whom below Galatia is frequented. In the same way as, when a dove alights near his companion, both of them pour forth, circling about and murmuring their affection, so one beheld I by the other, grand prince glorified, to be with welcome greeted, lauding the food that there above is eaten. But, when their gratulations were complete, silently, coram, each one stood still, so incandescent it o'ercame my sight. Smiling thereafterwards, said Beatrice, Illustrious life, by whom the benefactions of our basilica have been described, make hope resound within this altitude. Thou knowest, as oft thou dost personify it, as Jesus to the 3 gave greater clearness. Lift up thy head and make thyself assured, for what comes hither from the mortal world must needs be ripened in our radiance. This comfort came to me from the second fire, wherefore mine eyes I lifted to the hills, which bent them down before with too great weight. Since through his grace our Emperor wills that thou shouldst find thee face to face, before thy death, in the most secret chamber, with his counts, so that, the truth beholden of this court, hope, which below there rightfully enamours, thereby thou strengthen in thyself and others. Say what it is, and how is flowering with it thy mind, and say from whence it came to thee. Thus did the second light again continue. And the compassionate, who piloted the plumage of my wings in such high flight, did in reply anticipate me thus. No child whatever the church militant of greater hope possesses, as is written in that sun which irradiates all our band. Therefore it is conceded him from Egypt to come into Jerusalem to see, or ever yet his warfare be completed. The two remaining points, that not for knowledge have been demanded, but that he report how much this virtue unto thee is pleasing, to him I leave, for hard he will not find them, nor of self-praise, and let him answer them, and may the grace of God in this assist him. As a disciple who his teacher follows, ready and willing, where he is expert, that his proficiency may be displayed, hope, said I, is the certain expectation of future glory, which is the effect of grace divine and merit precedent. For many stars this light comes unto me, but he instilled it first into my heart who was chief singer unto the chief captain. Sperent in te, in the high theody he saith, those who know thy name, and who knoweth not if he my faith possess? Thou didst instil me then with his instilling in the epistle, so that I am full, and upon others rain again your reign. While I was speaking, in the living bosom of that combustion quivered an effulgence, sudden and frequent, in the guise of lightning. Then breathed, the love wherewith I am inflamed towards the virtue still which followed me unto the palm and issue of the field, wills that I breathe to thee, that thou delight in her. And grateful to me is thy telling whatever things hope promises to thee. And I, the ancient scriptures and the new the mark establish, and this shows it to me of all the souls whom God hath made his friends. Isaiah saith that each one garmented in his own land shall be with twofold garments, and his own land is this delightful life. Thy brother, too, far more explicitly, there where he treateth the robes of white, this revelation manifests to us. And first, and near the ending of these words, Sperent in te, from over us was heard, to which responsive answered all the carols. Thereafterward a light among them brightened, so that, if Cancer one such crystal had, winter would have a month of one sole day. And as uprises, goes, and enters the dance a winsome maiden, only to do honor to the new bride, and not from any failing, even thus did I behold the brightened splendor approach the two, who in a wheel revolved, as was beseeming to their ardent love. Into the song and music there it entered, and fixed on them my lady kept her look, even as a bride silent and motionless. This is the one who lay upon the breast of him our pelican, and this is he to the great office from the cross elected, my lady thus. But therefore none the more did move her sight from its attentive gaze before or afterward these words of hers. Even as a man who gazes and endeavors to see the eclipsing of the sun a little, and who by seeing sightless doth become, so I became before that latest fire, while it was said, why dost thou daze thyself to see a thing which here hath no existence? Earth in the earth my body is, and shall be with all the others there, until our number with the eternal proposition tallies. With the two garments in the blessed cloister are the two lights alone that have ascended, shalt thou take back into your world. And at this utterance the flaming circle grew quiet, with the dulcet intermingling of sound that by the trinal breath was made, as to escape from danger or fatigue. The oars that erst were in the water beaten are all suspended at a whistle's sound. Ah, how much in my mind was I disturbed when I turned round to look on Beatrice, that her I could not see, although I was close at her side and in the happy world. End of Canto 25. Canto 26. While I was doubting for my vision, quenched out of the flame refulgent that had quenched it, issued a breathing that attentive made me, saying, while thou recoverest the sense of seeing which in me thou hast consumed, begin then and declare to what thy soul is aimed, and count it for a certainty, sight is in thee bewildered and not dead, because the lady, who through this divine region conducteth thee, has in her look the power the hand of Ananias had. I said, as pleaseth her, or soon or late, let the cure come to eyes that portals were when she with fire I ever burn with entered. The good that gives consent to this court, the Alpha and Omega is of all the writing that love reads me, low or loud. The selfsame voice that taken had from me the terror of the sudden dazzlement, to speak still farther put it in my thought, and said, in verity with finer sieve behoveth thee to sift, thee it behoveth to say who aimed thy bow at such a target. And I, By philosophic arguments, and by authority that hence descends, such love must needs imprint itself in me. For good, so far as good, when comprehended, doth straight enkindle love, and so much greater as more of goodness in itself it holds. Then, to that essence, whose in such advantage that every good which out of it is found is nothing but a ray of its own light, more than elsewhither must the mind be moved of every one in loving, who discerns the truth in which this evidence is founded. Such truth he to my intellect reveals, who demonstrates to me the primal love of all the sempiternal substances. The voice reveals it of the truthful author, who says to Moses, speaking of himself, I will make all my goodness pass before thee. Thou to revealest to me, beginning the loud evangel that proclaims the secret of heaven to earth above all other edict. And I heard say, by human intellect, and by authority concordant with it, of all thy loves, reserve for God the highest. But say again, if other cords thou feelest, draw thee towards him, that thou mayst proclaim with how many teeth this love is biting thee. The holy purpose of the eagle of Christ not latent was, nay, rather I perceived whither he fain would my profession lead. Therefore I recommenced, all of those bites which have the power to turn the heart to God unto my charity have been concurrent. The being of the world and my own being, the death which he endured that I may live, and that which all the faithful hope, as I do, with the forementioned vivid consciousness have drawn me from the sea of love perverse, and of the right have placed me on the shore. The leaves wherewith embowered is all the garden of the eternal gardener, do I love as much as he has granted them of good. As soon as I had ceased, a song most sweet throughout the heaven resounded, and my lady said with the others, Holy, holy, holy! And as at some keen light one wakes from sleep by reason of the visual spirit that runs unto the splendor passed from coat to coat, and he who wakes abhorreth what he sees, so all unconscious is his sudden waking until the judgment cometh to his aid. So from before mine eyes did Beatrice chase every mote with radiance of her own that cast its light 1,000 miles and more. Whence better after than before I saw, and in a kind of wonderment I asked about the fourth light that I saw with us. And said my lady, there within those rays gazes upon its maker the first soul that ever the first virtue did create. Even as the bough that downward bends its top at transit of the wind, and then is lifted by its own virtue, which inclines it upward, likewise did I, and while that she was speaking, being amazed, and then I was made bold by a desire to speak wherewith I burned. And I began, O apple, that mature alone hast been produced, O ancient father, to whom each wife is daughter and daughter-in-law, devoutly as I can I supplicate thee, that thou wouldst speak to me. Thou seest my wish, and I, to hear thee quickly, speak it not. Sometimes an animal, when covered, struggles so that his impulse needs must be apparent by reason of the rapage following it, and in like manner the primeval soul made clear to me athwart its covering how jubilant it was to give me pleasure, then breathed, Without thy uttering it to me, thine inclination better I discern than thou whatever thing is surest to thee, for I behold it in the truthful mirror, that of himself all things parhelion makes, and none makes him parhelion of itself. Thou fain wouldst hear how long ago God placed me within the lofty garden, where this lady unto so long a stairway thee disposed. And how long to mine eyes it was a pleasure, and of the great disdain the proper cause, and the language that I used and that I made. Now, son of mine, the tasting of the trees not in itself was cause of so great exile, but solely the o'erstepping of the bounds. There, whence thy lady moved Virgilius 4,302 circuits made by the sun, this counsel I desired. And him I saw return to all the lights of his highway 900 times and 30, whilst I upon the earth was tarrying. The language that I spake was quite extinct before that in the work interminable the people under Nimrod were employed. For never more result of reasoning, because of human pleasure that doth change obedient to the heavens, was durable. A natural action is it that man speaks. But whether thus or thus doth nature leave to your own art as seemeth best to you. Ere I descended to the infernal anguish, El was on earth the name of the chief good, from whom comes all the joy that wraps me round. Eli he then was called, and that is proper, because the use of men is like a leaf on bough which goeth, and another cometh. Upon the mount that highest o'er the wave rises was I, in life, or pure or sinful, from the first hour to that which is the second, as the sun changes quadrant to the sixth. End of Canto 26. Canto 27. Glory be to the Father, to the Son, and to the Holy Ghost. All paradise began, so that the melody inebriate made me. What I beheld seemed unto me a smile of the universe, for my inebriation found entrance through the hearing and the sight. O joy, O gladness inexpressible, O perfect life of love and peacefulness, O riches without hankering secure! Before mine eyes were standing the 4 torches enkindled, and the one that first had come began to make itself more luminous, and even such in semblance it became as Jupiter would become if he and Mars were birds, and they should interchange their feathers. That providence which here distributeth season and service, in the blessed choir had silence upon every side imposed, when I heard say, If I my colour change, marvel not at it, for while I am speaking, thou shalt behold all these their colour change. He who usurps upon the earth my place which vacant has become before the presence of the Son of God, has of my cemetery made a sewer of blood and stench, whereby the perverse one who fell from here below there is appeased. With the same colour which, through sun adverse, painteth the clouds at evening or at morn, beheld I then the whole of heaven suffused. And as a modest woman, who abides sure of herself, and at another's failing from listening only, timorous becomes, even thus did Beatrice change countenance, and I believe in heaven was such eclipse, when suffered the supreme omnipotence. Thereafterward proceedeth forth his words with voice so much transmuted from itself, the very countenance was not more changed. The spouse of Christ has never nurtured been on blood of mine, of Linus and of Cletus, to be made use of in aquest of gold. But in aquest of this delightful life, Sixtus and Pius, Urban and Calixtus, after much lamentation, shed their blood. Our purpose was not that on the right hand of our successors should in part be seated the Christian folk, in part upon the other, nor that the keys which were to me confided should e'er become an escutcheon on a banner that should wage war on those who are baptized, nor I be made the figure of a seal to privileges venal and mendacious, whereat I often reddened and flash with fire. In garb of shepherds the rapacious wolves are seen from here above o'er all the pastures. O wrath of God, why dost thou slumber still? To drink our blood the Chaorsines and Gascons are making ready. O thou good beginning, unto how vile an end must thou needs fall! But the high providence, that with Scipio at Rome the glory of the world defended, will speedily bring aid, as I conceive, and thou, my son, who by thy mortal weight shalt down return again, open thy mouth. What I conceal not, do not thou conceal. As with its frozen vapours downward falls in flakes our atmosphere what time the horn of the celestial goat doth touch the sun, upward in such array saw I the ether become, and flaked with the triumphant vapours which there together with us had remained. My sight was following up their semblances, and followed till the medium, by excess the passing farther onward, took from it. Whereat the lady, who beheld me freed from gazing upward, said to me, Cast down thy sight, and see how far thou art turned round. Since the first time that I had downward looked, I saw that I had moved through the whole arc which the first climate makes from midst to end, so that I saw the mad track of Ulysses past Gades, and this side well nigh the shore, whereon became Europa a sweet burden. And of this threshing floor the sight to me were more unveiled, but the sun was proceeding under my feet, a sign, and more removed. My mind enamoured, which is dallying at all times with my lady, to bring back to her mine eyes was more than ever ardent. And if or art or nature has made bait to catch the eyes and so possess the mind in human flesh or in its portraiture, all joined together would appear as naught to the divine delight which shone upon me when to her smiling face I turned me round. The virtue that her look endowed me with from the fair nest of Leda tore me forth, and up into the swiftest heaven impelled me. Its parts exceeding full of life and lofty are all so uniform, I cannot say which Beatrice selected for my place. But she, who was aware of my desire, began, the while she smiled so joyously that God seemed in her countenance to rejoice, the nature of that motion which keeps quiet the centre, and all the rest about it moves, from hence begins, as from its starting point. And in this heaven there is no other where than in the mind divine, wherein is kindled the love that turns it, and the power it reigns. Within a circle light and love embrace it, even as this doth the others, and that precinct he who encircles it alone controls. Its motion is not by another meted, but all the others measured are by this, as 10 is by the half and by the fifth. And in what manner time in such a pot may have its roots, and in the rest its leaves, now unto thee can manifest be made. O covetousness, that mortals dost engulf beneath thee so, that no one hath the power of drawing back his eyes from out thy waves. Full fairly blossoms in mankind the will, but the uninterrupted rain converts into abortive wildings the true plums. Fidelity and innocence are found only in children. Afterwards they both take flight, or ere the cheeks with down are covered. One, while he prattles still, observes the fasts, who, when his tongue is loosed, forthwith devours whatever food under whatever moon. Another, while he prattles, loves and listens unto his mother, who, when speech is perfect, forthwith desires to see her in her grave. Even thus is swarthy made the skin so white in its first aspect of the daughter fair of him who brings the morn and leaves the night. Thou, that it may not be a marvel to thee, think that on earth there is no one who governs whence goes astray the human family. Ere January be unwintered wholly by the centesimal on earth neglected, shall these supernal circles roar so loud the tempest that has been so long awaited shall whirl the poops about where are the prows, so that the fleet shall run its course direct, and the true fruit shall follow on the flower. End of Canto 27.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Kirsten Ferreri. The Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. Translated by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Paradiso, Cantos 28 through 33. Canto 28. After the truth against the present life of miserable mortals was unfolded by her who doth in paradise my mind, as in a looking-glass a taper's flame he sees who from behind is lighted by it, before he has it in his sight or thought, and turns him round to see if so the glass tell him the truth, and sees that it accords therewith as doth a music with its metre. In similar wise my memory recollecteth that I did, looking into those fair eyes, of which love made the springs to ensnare me. And as I turned me round, and mine were touched by that which is apparent in that volume, whenever on its gyre we gaze intent, a point beheld I, that was raying out light so acute, the sight which it enkindles must close perforce before such great acuteness. And whatsoever star seems smallest here would seem to be a moon, if placed beside it, as one star with another star is placed. Perhaps at such a distance as appears a halo cincturing the light that paints it, when densest is vapour that sustains it, thus distant round the point a circle of fire so swiftly whirled that it would have surpassed whatever motion soonest girds the world, and this was by another circumsynct, that by a third, the third then by a fourth, by a fifth the fourth, and then by a sixth the fifth. The seventh followed thereupon in width so ample now, that Juno's messenger entire would be too narrow to contain it. even so the eighth and ninth, and every one more slowly moved, according as it was in number distant further from the first. And that one had its flame most crystalline, from which less distant was the stainless spark, I think because more with its truth imbued. My lady, who in my anxiety beheld me much perplexed, said, "From that point dependent is the heaven and nature all. Behold that circle most conjoined to it, and know thou that its motion is so swift through burning love, whereby it is spurred on." And I to her, "If the world were arranged in the order which I see in yonder wheels, what set before me would have satisfied me. But in the world of sense we can perceive that evermore the circles are diviner, as they are from the centre more remote. Wherefore, if my desire is to be ended in this miraculous and angelic temple, that has for confines only love and light, to hear behoves me still how the example and the exemplar go not in one fashion, since for myself in vain I contemplate it. If thine own fingers unto such a knot be insufficient, it is no great wonder, so hard hath it become for want of trying." My lady thus. Then said she, "Do thou take what I shall tell thee, if thou wouldst be sated, and exercise on that thy subtlety. The circles corporal are wide and narrow, according to the more or less of virtue which is distributed through all their parts. The greater goodness works the greater weal, the greater weal the greater body holds, if perfect equally are all its parts. Therefore this one which sweeps along with it the universe sublime doth correspond unto the circle which most loves and knows. On which account, if thou unto the virtue apply thy measure, not to the appearance of substances that unto thee seem round, thou wilt behold a marvellous agreement, of more to greater, and of less to smaller, in every heaven with its intelligence. Even as remaineth splendid and serene the hemisphere of air, where Boreas is blowing from that cheek where he is mildest, because it is purified, and resolved the rack that erst disturbed it, till the welkin laughs with all the beauties of its pageantry. Thus did I likewise. After that my lady had me provided with her clear response, and like a star in heaven the truth was seen. And soon as to a stop her words had come, not otherwise does iron scintillate when molten, than those circles scintillated. Their coruscation all the sparks repeated, and they so many were, their number makes more millions than the doubling of the chess. I heard them sing Hosanna choir by choir to the fixed point which holds them at the ubi, and ever will, where they have ever been. And she, who saw the dubious meditations within my mind, the primal circles said, have shown thee seraphim and cherubim. Thus rapidly they follow their own bonds, to be as like the point as most they can, and can as far as they are high in vision. Those other loves that round about them go, thrones of the countenance divine are called, because they terminate the primal triad. And thou shouldst know that they have all delight, as much as their own vision penetrates the truth, in which all intellect finds rest. From this it may be seen how blessedness is founded in the faculty which sees, and not in that which loves, and follows next. And of this seeing merit is the measure, which is brought forth by grace and by good will. Thus on from grade to grade doth it proceed. The second triad, which is germinating in such wise in this sempiternal spring that no nocturnal Aries despoils, perpetually Hosanna warbles forth with threefold melody, that sounds in three orders of joy, with which it is entwined. The three divine are in this hierarchy: first the dominions, and the virtues next, and the third order is that of the powers. Then in the dances twain penultimate the principalities and archangels wheel, the last is wholly of angelic sports. These orders upward all of them are gazing, and downward so prevail, that unto God they all attracted are, and all attract. And Dionysius, with so great desire to contemplate these orders, set himself. He named them, and distinguished them as I do. But Gregory afterwards dissented from him, wherefore, as soon as he unclosed his eyes within this heaven, he at himself did smile. And if so much of secret truth a mortal proffered on earth, I would not have thee marvel. For he who saw it here revealed it to him, with much more of the truth about these circles. Canto 29. At what time the children of Latona, surmounted by the ram and by the scales, together make a zone of the horizon, as long as from the time the zenith holds them in equipoise, till from that the girdle both, changing their hemisphere, disturb the balance, so long her face depicted with a smile did Beatrice keep silence, while she gazed fixedly at the point which had overcome me. Then she began, I say, and I ask not what thou dost wish to hear, for I have seen it where centres every when and every ubi, not to acquire some good unto himself, which is impossible, but that his splendour, in its resplendency, may say, subsisto, in his eternity outside of time, outside all other limits, as it pleased him, into new loves the eternal love unfolded. Nor, as if torpid, did he lie before, for neither after nor before proceeded the going forth of God upon these waters. Matter and form, unmingled and conjoined, came into being that had no defect, even as 3 arrows from a 3-stringed bow. And as in glass, in amber, or in crystal a sunbeam flashes so, that from its coming to its full being is no interval, so from its Lord did the triform effect ray forth into its being altogether, without discrimination of beginning. Order was co-created and constructed in substances, and summit of the world were those wherein the pure act was produced. Pure potentiality held the lowest part, midway bound potentiality with act such bond that it shall never be unbound. Jerome has written unto you of angels, created a long lapse of centuries, or ever yet the other world was made. But written is this truth in many places by writers of the Holy Ghost, and thou shalt see it if thou lookest well thereat. And even reason seeth it somewhat, for it would not concede that for so long could be the motors without their perfection. Now dost thou know both where and when these loves created were, and how, so that extinct in thy desire already are 3 fires. Nor could one reach in counting unto 20 so swiftly, as a portion of these angels disturbed the subject of your elements. The rest remained, and they began this art which thou discernest, with so great delight that never from their circling do they cease. The occasion of the fall was the accursed presumption of that one whom thou hast seen by all the burden of the world constrained. Those whom thou here beholdest modest were to recognize themselves as of that goodness which made them apt for so much understanding, on which account their vision was exalted by the enlightening grace and their own merit, so that they have a full and steadfast will. I would not have thee doubt, but certain be, 'tis meritorious to receive this grace, according as the affection opens to it. Now round about in this consistory much mayest thou contemplate, if these my words be gathered up, without all further aid. But since upon the earth, throughout your schools, they teach that such is the angelic nature that it doth hear, and recollect, and will, more will I say, that thou mayest see unmixed the truth that is confounded there below, equivocating in such like prelections. These substances, since in God's countenance they jocund were, turned not away their sight from that wherefrom not anything is hidden. Hence they have not their vision intercepted by object new, and hence they do not need to recollect through interrupted thought. So that below, not sleeping, people dream, believing they speak truth, and not believing, and in the last is greater sin and shame. Below you do not journey by one path philosophizing, so transporteth you love of appearance, and the thought thereof. And even this above here is endured with less disdain than when is set aside the holy writ, or when it is distorted. They think not there how much of blood it costs to sow it in the world, and how he pleases who in humility keeps close to it. Each striveth for appearance, and doth make his own inventions, and these treated are by preachers, and the evangel holds its peace. One saith that the moon did backward turn in the passion of Christ, and interpose herself so that the sunlight reached not down below, and lies, for of its own accord the light hid itself, whence to Spaniards and to Indians, as to the Jews, did such eclipse respond. Florence has not so many Lapi and Bindi as fables such are these, that every year are shouted from the pulpit back and forth, in such wise that the lambs, who do not know, come back from pasture fed upon the wind, and not to see the harm doth not excuse them. Christ did not to his first disciples say, Go forth, and to the world preach idle tales, but unto them a true foundation gave, and this so loudly sounded from their lips, that in the warfare to enkindle faith they made of the evangel shields and lances. Now men go forth with jests and drolleries to preach, and if but well the people laugh, the hood puffs out, and nothing more is asked. But in the cowl there nestles such a bird that, if the common people were to see it, they would perceive what pardons they confine in. For which so great on earth has grown the folly, that, without proof of any testimony, to each indulgence they would flock together. By this Saint Anthony his pig doth fatten, and many others, who are worse than pigs, paying in money without mark of coinage. But since we have digressed abundantly, turn back thine eyes forthwith to the right path, so that the way be shortened with the time. This nature doth so multiply itself in numbers, that there never yet was speech nor mortal fancy that can go so far. And if thou notest that which is revealed by Daniel, thou wilt see that in his thousands number determinate is kept concealed. The primal light that all irradiates it by modes as many is received therein, as are the splendours wherewith it is mated. Hence, inasmuch as on the act conceptive the affection followeth, of love the sweetness therein diversely fervid is, or tepid. The height behold now, and the amplitude of the eternal power, since it hath made itself so many mirrors, where it is broken, one in itself remaining as before. Canto 30. Perchance 6,000 miles remote from us is glowing the 6th hour, and now this world inclines its shadow almost to a level. When the mid-heaven begins to make itself so deep to us, that here and there a star ceases to shine so far down as this depth, and as advances bright exceedingly the handmaid of the sun, the heaven is closed, light after light, to the most beautiful. Not otherwise the triumph, which for ever plays round about the point that vanquished me, seeming enclosed by what itself encloses. Little by little from my vision faded, whereat to turn mine eyes on Beatrice, my seeing nothing and my love constrained me. If what has hitherto been said of her were all concluded in a single praise, scant would it be to serve the present turn. Not only does the beauty I beheld transcend ourselves, but truly I believe its maker only may enjoy it all. Vanquished do I confess me by this passage, more than by problem of his theme was ever overcome the comic or the tragic poet. For as the sun the sight that trembles most, even so the memory of that sweet smile my mind depriveth of its very self. From the first day that I beheld her face in this life, to the moment of this look, the sequence of my song has never been severed. But now perforce this sequence must desist from following her beauty with my verse, as every artist at his uttermost. Such as I leave her to a greater fame than any of my trumpet, which is bringing its arduous matter to a final close. With voice and gesture of a perfect leader she recommenced. We from the greatest body have issued to the heaven that is pure light, light intellectual, replete with love, love of true good, replete with ecstasy, ecstasy that transcendeth every sweetness. Here shalt thou see the one host and the other of paradise, and one in the same aspects which at the final judgment thou shalt see. Even as a sudden lightning that disperses the visual spirits, so that it deprives the eye of impress from the strongest objects, thus round about me flashed a living light, and left me swathed around with such a veil of its effulgence that I nothing saw. Ever the love which quieteth this heaven welcomes into itself with such salute, to make the candle ready for its flame. No sooner had within me these brief words an entrance found, than I perceived myself to be uplifted over my own power, and I, with vision new, rekindled me, such that no light whatever is so pure but that mine eyes were fortified against it. And light I saw in fashion of a river, fulved with its effulgence, twixt two banks depicted with an admirable spring. Out of this river issued living sparks, and on all sides sank down into the flowers, like unto rubies that are set in gold. And then, as if inebriate with the odours, they plunged again into the wondrous torrent, and as one entered, issued forth another. The high desire that now inflames and moves thee to heave intelligence of what thou seest, pleaseth me all the more it swells. But of this water it behoves thee drink, before so great a thirst in thee be slaked. Thus said to me the sunshine of mine eyes, and added, the river and the topazes, going in and out, and the laughing of the herbage, are of their truth foreshadowing prefaces. Not that these things are difficult in themselves, but the deficiency is on thy side, for yet thou hast not vision so exalted. There is no babe that leaps so suddenly with face towards the milk, if he awake much later than his usual custom is, as I did, that I might make better mirrors still of mine eyes, down stooping to the wave which flows, that we therein be better made. And even as the penthouse of mine eyelids drank of it, it forthwith appeared to me out of its length to be transformed to round. Then, as a folk who have been under masks seem other than before, if they divest the semblance not their own they disappeared in, thus into greater pomp were changed for me the flowerets and the sparks, so that I saw both of the courts of heaven made manifest. O splendour of God, by means of which I saw the lofty triumph of the realm veracious, give me the power to say it how I saw. There is a light above, which visible makes the Creator unto every creature, who only in beholding him has peace, and it expands itself in circular form to such extent that its circumference would be too large a girdle for the sun. The semblance of it all is made of rays reflected from the top of primal motion, which takes therefrom vitality and power. And, as a hill in water at its base mirrors itself, as if to see its beauty when affluent most in verdure and in flowers, so, ranged aloft all round about the light, mirrored I saw in more ranks than 1,000 all who above there have from us returned. And if the lowest row collect within it so great a light, how vast the amplitude is of this rose in its extremest leaves! My vision in the vastness and the height lost not itself, but comprehended all the quantity and quality of that gladness. There near and far nor add nor take away, for there where God immediately doth govern, the natural law in naught is relevant. Into the yellow of the rose eternal that spreads and multiplies and breathes an odour of praise unto the ever vernal sun, as one who silent is, and fain would speak, me Beatrice drew on, and said, behold of the white stoles how vast the convent is. Behold how vast the circuit of our city. Behold our seats so filled to overflowing, that here henceforward are few people wanting. On that great throne, whereon thine eyes are fixed for the crown's sake already placed upon it, before thou suppest at this wedding feast, shall sit the soul, that is to be Augustus on earth, of noble Henry, who shall come to redress Italy ere she be ready. Blind covetousness, that casts its spell upon you, has made you like unto that little child who dies of hunger and drives off the nurse. And in the sacred forum then shall be a prefect such that openly or covert, on the same road, he will not walk with him. But long of God he will not be endured in holy office. He shall be thrust down, where Simon Magus is for his deserts, and make him of Alanya lower go. Canto 31. In fashion then, as of a snow-white rose, displayed itself to me the saintly host, whom Christ in his own blood had made his bride. But the other host, that flying sees and sings the glory of him who doth enamour it, and the goodness that created it so noble, even as a swarm of bees that sinks in flowers one moment, and the next returns again to where its labour is to sweetness turned, sank into the great flower, that is adorned with leaves so many, and thence reascended to where its love abideth evermore. Their faces had they all of living flame, and wings of gold, and all the rest so white no snow unto that limit doth attain. From bench to bench, into the flower descending, they carried something of the peace and ardour which by the fanning of their flanks they won. Nor did the interposing twixt the flower and what was over it of such plenitude of flying shapes impede the sight and splendour, because the light divine so penetrates the universe, according to its merit, that naught can be an obstacle against it. This realm, secure and full of gladsomeness, crowded with ancient people and with modern, unto one mark had all its look and love. O trinal light, that in a single star sparkling upon their sight so satisfies them, look down upon our tempest here below. If the barbarians, coming from some region that every day by Helice is covered, revolving with her son whom she delights in, beholding Rome and all her noble works, were wonderstruck, what time the Lateran above all mortal things was eminent, I, who to the divine had from the human, from time unto eternity, had come from Florence to a people just and sane, with what amazement must I have been filled! Truly, between this and the joy, it was my pleasure not to hear, and to be mute. And as a pilgrim, who delighteth him in gazing round the temple of his vow, and hopes some day to retell how it was, so through the living light my way pursuing, directed I mine eyes o'er all the ranks, now up, now down, and now all round about. Faces I saw of charity persuasive, embellished by his light and their own smile, and attitudes adorned with every grace. The general form of paradise already my glance had comprehended as a whole, in no part hitherto remaining fixed. And round I turned me with rekindled wish my lady to interrogate of things concerning which my mind was in suspense. One thing I meant, another answered me. I thought I should see Beatrice, and saw an old man, habited like the glorious people. O'erflowing was he in his eyes and cheeks with joy benign, in an attitude of pity as to a tender father is becoming, and she, where is she? Instantly I said, whence he? To put an end to thy desire, me Beatrice hath sent from mine own place, and if thou lookest up to the third round of the first rank, again shalt thou behold her upon the throne her merits have assigned her. Without reply I lifted up mine eyes, and saw her, as she made herself a crown reflecting from herself the eternal rays. Not from that region which the highest thunders is any mortal eye so far removed, in whatsoever sea it deepest sinks, as there from Beatrice my sight. But this was nothing unto me, because her image descended not to me by medium blurred. O Lady, thou in whom my hope is strong, and who for my salvation didst endure in hell to leave the imprint of thy feet, of whatsoever things I have beheld, as coming from thy power and from thy goodness, I recognize the virtue and the grace. Thou from a slave hast brought me unto freedom, by all those ways, by all the expedients whereby thou hadst the power of doing it. Preserve towards me thy magnificence, so that this soul of mine, which thou hast healed, pleasing to thee be loosened from the body. Thus I implored, and she, so far away, smiled as it seemed, and looked once more at me, then unto the eternal fountain turned. And said the old man wholly, that thou mayest accomplish perfectly thy journeying, whereunto prayer and holy love has sent me, fly with thine eyes all round about this garden, for seeing it will discipline thy sight further to mount along the ray divine. And she, the Queen of Heaven, for whom I burn wholly with love, will grant us every grace, because that I her faithful Bernard am. As he who peradventure from Croatia cometh to gaze at our Veronica, who through its ancient fame is never sated, but says in thought, the while it is displayed, My Lord, Christ Jesus, God of very God, now was your semblance made like unto this. Even such was I, while gazing at the living charity of the man who in this world through contemplation tasted of that peace. Thou son of grace, this jocund life, began he, will not be known to thee by keeping ever thine eyes below here on the lowest place. But mark the circles to the most remote, until thou shalt behold enthroned the Queen, to whom this realm is subject and devoted. I lifted up mine eyes, and as at morn the oriental part of the horizon surpasses that wherein the sun goes down, thus, as if going with mine eyes from vale to mount, I saw a part in the remoteness surpass in splendour all the other front. And even as there, where we await the pole that Phaeton drove badly, blazes more the light, and is on either side diminished, so likewise that pacific oriflamme gleamed brightest in the centre, and each side in equal measure did the flame abate, and at that centre, with their wings expanded, more than 1,000 jubilant angels saw I, each differing in effulgence and in kind. I saw there, at their sports and at their songs, a beauty smiling, which the gladness was within the eyes of all the other saints. And if I had in speaking as much wealth as in imagining, I should not dare to attempt the smallest part of its delight. Bernard, as soon as he beheld mine eyes, fixed and intent upon its fervid fervour, his own with such affection turned to her, that it made mine more ardent to behold. Canto 32. Absorbed in his delight, that contemplator assumed the willing office of a teacher, and gave beginning to these holy words. The wound that Mary closed up and anointed, she at her feet who is so beautiful, she is the one who opened it and pierced it. Within that order which the third seats make is seated Rachel, lower than the other, with Beatrice, in manner as thou seest. Sarah, Rebecca, Judith, and her who was ancestress of the singer, who for dole of the misdeed said Miserere mei, canst thou behold from seat to seat descending down in gradation, as with each one's name I, through the rows, go down from leaf to leaf. And downward from the 7th row, even as above the same, succeed the Hebrew women, dividing all the tresses of the flower, because, according to the view which faith in Christ had taken, these are the partition by which the sacred stairways are divided. Upon this side, where perfect is the flower with each one of its petals, seated are those who believed in Christ who was to come. Upon the other side, where intersected with vacant spaces are the semicircles, are those who looked to Christ already come. And as upon this side, the glorious seat of the Lady of Heaven, and the other seats below it, such a great division make. So opposite doth that of the great John, who ever holy desert and martyrdom endured, and afterwards 2 years in hell. And under him thus to divide were chosen Francis, and Benedict, and Augustine, and down to us the rest from round to round. Behold now the high providence divine, for one and the other aspect of the faith in equal measure shall this garden fill. And know that downward from that rank which cleaves midway the sequence of the 2 divisions, not by their proper merit are they seated, but by another's under fixed conditions. For these are spirits one and all assoiled before they any true election had. Well canst thou recognize it in their faces, and also in their voices puerile, if thou regard them well and hearken unto them. Now doubtest thou, and doubting thou art silent. But I will loosen for thee the strong bond in which thy subtle fancies hold thee fast. Within the amplitude of this domain no casual point can possibly find place, no more than sadness can, or thirst, or hunger. For by eternal law has been established whatever thou beholdest. so that closely the ring is fitted to the finger here. And therefore are these people festinate unto true life, not sine causa here, more and less excellent among themselves. The king, by means of whom this realm reposes in so great love, and in so great delight, that no will ventureth to ask for more. In his own joyous aspect, every mind creating, at his pleasure dowers with grace diversely, and let here the effect suffice. And this is clearly and expressly noted for you in Holy Scripture, in those twins who in their mother had their anger roused, according to the colour of the hair. Therefore with such a grace the light supreme consenteth that they worthily be crowned. Without then any merit of their deeds, stationed are they in different gradations, differing only in their first acuteness. 'Tis true that in the early centuries with innocence, to work out their salvation sufficient was the faith of parents only. After the earlier ages were completed, behoved it that the males by circumcision unto their innocent wings should virtue add. But after that the time of grace had come. Without the baptism absolute of Christ, such innocence below there was retained. Look now into the face that unto Christ hath most resemblance, for its brightness only is able to prepare thee to see Christ. On her did I behold so great a gladness rain down, borne onward in the holy minds created through that altitude to fly, that whatsoever I had seen before did not suspend me in such admiration, nor show me such similitude of God. And the same love that first descended there, Ave Maria gratia plena singing, in front of her his wings expanded wide. Unto the canticle divine responded from every part the court beatified, so that each sight became serener for it. O Holy Father, who for me endurest to be below here, leaving the sweet place in which thou sittest by eternal lot, who is the angel that with so much joy into the eyes is looking of our Queen, enamoured so that he seems made of fire? Thus I again recourse had to the teaching of that one who delighted him in Mary, as doth the star of morning in the sun. And he to me, such gallantry and grace as there can be in angel and in soul, all is in him, and thus we fain would have it, because he is the one who bore the palm down unto Mary, when the Son of God to take our burden on himself decreed. But now come onward with thine eyes, as I speaking shall go, and note the great patricians of this most just and merciful of empires. Those two that sit above there most in rapture, as being very near unto Augusta, are as it were the two roots of this rose. He who upon the left is near her placed, the Father is, by whose audacious taste the human species so much bitter tastes. Upon the right thou seest that ancient Father of Holy Church, into whose keeping Christ the keys committed of this lovely flower. And he who all the evil days beheld before his death, of her the beauteous bride, who with the spear and with the nails was one, beside him sits, and by the other rests that leader, under whom on manna lived the people ingrate, fickle, and stiff-necked. Opposite Peter seest thou Anna seated, so well content to look upon her daughter, her eyes move not while she sings Hosanna. And opposite the eldest household father Lucia sits, she who thy lady moved when to rush downward thou didst bend thy brows. But since the moments of thy vision fly, here will we make a full stop, as a good tailor who makes the gown according to his cloth, and unto the first love will turn our eyes, that looking upon him thou penetrate as far as possible through his effulgence. Truly, lest peradventure thou recede, moving thy wings believing to advance, by prayer behoves it that grace be obtained, grace from that one who has the power to aid thee, and thou shalt follow me with thy affection, that from my words thy heart not turn aside. And he began this holy orison. Canto 33. Thou Virgin Mother, daughter of thy Son, humble and high beyond all other creatures, the limit fixed of the eternal counsel, thou art the one who such nobility to human nature gave, that its Creator did not disdain to make himself its creature. Within thy womb rekindled was the love, by heat of which in the eternal peace, after such wise this flower has germinated. Here unto us thou art a noonday torch of charity, and below, there among mortals, thou art the living fountainhead of hope. Lady, thou art so great and so prevailing that he who wishes grace, nor runs to thee, his aspirations without wings could fly. Not only thy benignity gives succour to him who asketh it, but oftentimes forerunneth of its own accord the asking. In thee compassion is, in thee is pity, in thee magnificence, in thee unites whatever of goodness is in any creature. Now doth this man, who from the lowest depth of the universe as far as here has seen one after one the spiritual lives, supplicate thee through grace for so much power, that with his eyes he may uplift himself higher towards the uttermost salvation. And I, who never burned for my own seeing more than I do for his, all of my prayers proffer to thee, and pray they come not short, that thou wouldst scatter from him every cloud of his mortality, so with thy prayers, that the chief pleasure be to him displayed. Still further do I pray thee, Queen, who canst whatever thou wilt, that sound thou mayest preserve after so great a vision his affections. Let thy protection conquer human movements. See Beatrice and all the blessed ones my prayers to second clasp their hands to thee. The eyes, beloved and revered of God, fastened upon the speaker, showed to us how grateful unto her our prayers devout. Then unto the eternal light they turned, on which it is not credible could be by any creature bent an eye so clear. And I, who to the end of all desires was now approaching, even as I ought the ardour of desire within me ended. Bernard was beckoning unto me, and smiling, that I should upward look. But I already was of my own accord such as he wished, because my sight, becoming purified, was entering more and more into the ray of the high light which of itself is true. From that time forward, what I saw was greater than our discourse, that to such vision yields, and yields the memory unto such excess. Even as he is who seeth in a dream, and after dreaming the imprinted passion remains, and to his mind the rest returns not, even such am I. For almost utterly ceases my vision, and distilleth yet within my heart the sweetness born of it. Even thus the snow is in the sun unsealed. Even thus upon the wind in the light leaves were the soothsayings of the Sibyl lost. O light supreme, that dost so far uplift thee from the conceits of mortals, to my mind of what thou didst appear relend a little, and make my tongue of so great puissance that but a single sparkle of thy glory it may bequeath unto the future people. For by returning to my memory somewhat, and by a little sounding in these verses more of thy victory shall be conceived. I think the keenness of the living ray which I endured would have bewildered me, if mine eyes had been averted from it. And I remember that I was more bold on this account to bear, so that I joined my aspect with the glory infinite. O grace abundant, by which I presumed to fix my sight upon the light eternal, so that the seeing I consumed therein, I saw that in its depth far down is lying, bound up with love together in one volume, what through the universe in leaves is scattered, substance and accident, and their operations all interfused together in such wise that what I speak of is one simple light. The universal fashion of this knot methinks I saw, since more abundantly in saying this I feel that I rejoice. One moment is more lethargy to me than 25 centuries to the emprise that startled Neptune with the shade of Argo. My mind in this wise wholly in suspense, steadfast, immovable, attentive gazed, and evermore with gazing grew enkindled. In presence of that light one such becomes, that to withdraw therefrom for other prospect it is impossible he ever consent, because the good, which object is of will, is gathered all in this, and out of it that is defective which is perfect there. Shorter henceforth will my language fall of what I yet remember than an infant's who still his tongue doth moisten at the breast, not because more than one unmingled semblance was in the living light on which I looked, for it is always what it was before, but through the sight that fortified itself in me by looking, one appearance only to me was ever changing as I changed. Within the deep and luminous subsistence of the high light appeared to me 3 circles, of threefold colour and of one dimension, and by the second seemed the first reflected, as iris is by iris, and the third seemed fire that equally from both is breathed. Oh, how all speech is feeble, and falls short of my conceit! And this, to what I saw, is such, 'tis not enough to call it little. O light eternal, soul in thyself that dwellest, soul knowest thyself, and known unto thyself, and knowing, lovest and smilest on thyself. That circulation, which being thus conceived, appeared in thee as a reflected light, when somewhat contemplated by mine eyes, within itself, of its own very colour, seemed to me painted with our effigy, wherefore my sight was all absorbed therein. As the geometrician, who endeavours to square the circle, and discovers not by taking thought the principle he wants, even such was I at that new apparition. I wished to see how the image to the circle conformed itself, and how it there finds place, but my own wings were not enough for this, had it not been that then my mind there smote a flash of lightning, wherein came its wish. Here vigour failed the lofty fantasy, but now was turning my desire and will, even as a will that equally is moved, the love which moves the sun and other stars. End of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. Translated by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow.